is there something as too much hamstring mobility? In some cases, we'll see individuals who can bend over in a toe touch and palm the ground, maybe even put their forearms to the ground, and they're expressing a lot of range or length in their hamstrings and also in their lumbar spine, right? And one of the things that we'll see when performing RDLs or hip hinge patterns is that these individuals will excessively extend the pelvis and to find tension in their hamstrings, right? And when we're performing a hip hinge pattern, for example, really what we're trying to do is we're trying to eccentrically load that hamstring. Now, if our hamstring is already relatively lengthened, we're not going to be able to find that tension that we're looking for on that negative portion of the movement, right? So to get that movement, what happens is when I anteriorly rotate the pelvis, what I'm doing is I'm actually creating more of a stretch in the hamstring. And with the anterior rotation of the pelvis, we're also going to see extension of the lumbar spine. And again, not necessarily a bad thing, but that can be a problem over time, right? And that's not with everyone, but there are times where these types of individuals will experience low back pain, also have extreme range of motion in their low back, in their pelvis, right? And they may constantly feel tight, but from a range of motion standpoint, they're full. They're actually excessive. And so one of the things that we want to teach these people is how to use their hamstrings in a neutral position, right? Without having to overextend to get that pre-stretch on the hamstrings. And that's where some of our proximal stability and hip orientation drills can come in as a way to initiate this understanding of how to control our pelvis in space. And these exercises alone aren't going to fix anything, but they're starting to create some awareness of where our body is in space and ultimately how we can start to use that in more challenging positions. So for example, the first thing that I'll do is, again, in this supine position, heels on the mat, right? We can think about starting to just gently tuck the pelvis. The cues here, belt buckle towards the face or back pockets toward the backs of the knees, right? So a gentle tuck of the hips, right? In this position, heels are pulling down and back towards you, okay? So again, in this position, I start to feel some hamstring tension, the backs of my legs, and again, my belt buckles up towards my knees. I can even add a reach of my upper body and an exhale. And again, in that position, you might have someone test their toe touch initially and have them palm the ground, and now when they go to touch after 5 breaths, 10 breaths, or a few rounds, they may actually be a little shorter, right? And that's not a bad thing, but we've learned how to create some tension in that posterior chain. Again, very similar exercise that we can do. Again, we can grab a bench, a box, a chair, just like this. Same idea. I can go a little bit outside of 90 degrees. I can go heels down and back, hips are tucked, back pockets towards the knees, belt buckle towards the face, right? And I can start to curl my hips up gently, just so my waist is still on the ground in this position, right? I can kick one leg up, right? I can hold that for 5 breaths. Each side. In this position, I should be feeling some tension in my torso and also the backs of my legs. So again, both of those exercises are great for teaching some awareness of pelvic position. So when we go back to that hip hinge position, I don't have to excessively extend through my low back, through my hips to find that tension in the hamstrings.